Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend podcast, where we break down the bold moves behind business and leadership success for you. I'm your host, Sana, and today's guest, listeners, is someone who dared to walk away from the comfort of corporate America after 30 years to rediscover herself and help others do the same, something which I absolutely connect with. So, listeners, meet Kristen Chimack. She's the founder of Down to Earth Insights LLC. She's a coach, she's a retreat creator, and also author of The Cost of Staying book. And her journey from a Fortune 50 executive to an entrepreneur is full of lessons about courage, authenticity, resilience, and then redefining success. So, with that, Kristen, welcome to the show, and it is such an honor to have you with us.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here and to get the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners and also learn from your insights.
Absolutely. So let's start with that. So let's talk about your journey, Kristen. I think in the recent 4 or 5 years, especially after pandemic, um, we have seen so much shift in the way we perceive ourselves, our life, success, our external accomplishments and validations. I mean, there has been a pivotal shift in the way we think and look at things. So with that, I have had a huge transformation. I have, I left my 10 years of corporate experience, and then somehow got into podcasting and I'm just going along with this because I feel aligned and I feel that joy and fulfillment while doing this. It may not be as very flashy or very glorified probably to others, but personally for me it has been such an enlightening and fulfilling transformation. So, uh, with your journey, Kristen, 30 years in corporate America, what was that tipping point that made you decide I can't do this anymore, or probably I should look for something different? Probably this is not giving me that joy. And-
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing is I don't know if there was one tipping point other than there was this constant feeling that there has to be more. And is
Mhm.
this, all I was meant to do? And I found myself showing up to work, and there were moments throughout my day where I would think, I I hear what I'm saying, like, I hear what I'm saying to these groups of people that I'm talking to, but I don't believe it anymore. And so, it was like those I call them in my book, I talk a lot about listening to the whispers. And so I would hear sort of those whispers throughout the day around there has to be more or how many days until I'll be able to retire. And that would just continue to build over the course of a few years to the point where I couldn't ignore them anymore. And that's where then I started to really think about what could be next and what happens if I leave before, that magical retirement date that I was targeting. And how do you even think about leaving, a career of 30 years where, I'd started as a part-time payment clerk, entry level position and moved my way up to the executive roles. And I'd really just sort of felt like you work so hard to become that executive role so you can impact and change the culture of the organization, and then I got to a place where I thought, "I'm not gonna be able to change it. This is a big company, there's a lot of history," and, that's when I started to realize, "You know what? I've become authentically who they want me to be instead of who I was authentically," and that's where I think I started to really feel the urge, like, I have to do something different because when I'm here, in this building or doing this role, I'm just not being myself.
Mm, I think that's the you know that's one particular sentence I can so relate to it because before consciously deciding to leave, I had always this constant feeling of I'm not feeling the way I used to feel some time back. I'm not feeling myself. I am not feeling like even waking up or working, or maybe I'm not feeling that connection when I am talking to a client, or trying to understand what I'm here, why am I here working, what exactly I'm trying to achieve. So,
Mhm.
there have been a lot of questions like that. I absolutely connect with you, Kristen. But there's a fear of leaving the steady paycheck. You know, ev-
Yeah.
uh, uh, Steadiness, the safety net we have, the security we have. So I think a lot of listeners, they feel stuck because of this fear. So how did you navigate? I mean, if you felt that fear, how did you navigate through that in real time, considering the practical implications, or maybe the dynamics of this transition?
Yeah, I mean, that paycheck is a powerful thing. I often say, I stayed as long as I did because I was addicted to that paycheck and the bonuses and the benefits and everything that came with the role. And it is scary to think about walking away and not having that security because, right, your whole life is built around that. And so, one of the things that I know I did and I coach my clients to do is really start with self awareness, because sometimes you don't have to walk away. You can make changes throughout your day to day or put boundaries around it so that you can show up more authentically and you can get back to feeling comfortable there, right? And so I often tell my clients, and this is what I did as well, is, start kind of with self-awareness and, you can do it really easily by just, whether it's your app in your phone, your notes app, or writing on a piece of paper, just throughout the day answering the questions that I always like to throw out are like, what's bugging me? Like, why am I feeling this way today or in this moment? And then where am I making excuses? Um, and then the big one is, what would I do if I wasn't afraid? And when you answer those questions, to really notice, like, where do you feel that in your body? So that kind of gets to the next piece of recognizing, like, those physical signs that your body's giving you. I often say the body knows before our minds do when we need to make change or when something's really off. So, where are you feeling tense? When does your jaw clench throughout the day? Is it every time you talk to your boss? Is it when you're with your team? Is it, on the drive in? Where are those conversations that you're holding your breath? And when you start to notice those changes, it will start to give you clues around an insight into what maybe needs to change for you to start to get back in touch with, yourself and the joy of work. Because if you notice all those things when it's with your boss, then can you stay with the same organization but maybe move to a new area? If it's with a particular teammate, is there something you can do to have conversations with that teammate to resolve it? In my case, I just felt it from the morning I got there to the morning I left. And that was a pretty big indication for me that, something wasn't right. And then I needed to dive deeper. And that's where I really started to look at my core values. So I did a lot of work around what are my top, 3 to 5 core values? What do they mean to me? So not just, one of my core values is family, but really defining what does that mean? And once I did that with my top 5 core values, it was really clear to me why I was struggling so much at work, right? So one of my values is transparency. When I looked and kind of after I defined that and then I looked at every day at work, I didn't feel like I was being transparent, right? I was standing up on stages telling people, you know, what a great organization it was and how much I loved coming to work. And if you we spend so much time at work, you need to be happy while you're here. And if you're not, you need to look doing something else. So all of a sudden I found I was saying all of those things, but yet I personally wasn't happy. And I wasn't looking to do something else. So there was a bit of transparency that was just in constant conflict with my values. Courage is another one of my core values, and I found myself in meetings just disengaging and not saying what I was thinking because, I knew it was against the grain of the organization. And so, all of those things started to become really clear when I did a lot of what I would call self-reflection, grounding myself in who I really am and what's really important to me and looking for where I was out of alignment. And then once you have that, you can start to work through, does it mean I have to leave? Or are there things I can do and change to stay within the environment? And, still be happy, be successful, feel fulfilled, and all of those things.
Mm. That I couldn't agree more with you on this. Couldn't agree more with you. And that feeling, that realization when it dawns upon you that what you are saying to others, or maybe the new joinees or people who are working with you, or they're in a part of your organization, if you're not connected with what you're conveying to them, could be about the culture or the work or anything related to the organization, I think that kind of hits the conscience very
Mhm.
deep. And then you have that guilt feeling that, I myself, I'm not happy. How can I tell others to be happy if,
Yeah.
so that's really, really well put, Kristen.
Yeah.
And
Thank you. I think the other thing that I would say is, I had to learn to give myself permission to define success differently, right? So,
Mhm.
you go through, you go to school, you go to college, you get a job, success is defined as that the amount of your paycheck, the title that you have, the bonus that you get. And so for so long, I'd been chasing that executive title because I wanted to make an impact and I wanted to change. And then when I got there, I realized like I'm not happy. Like all that I've worked for, everything I've done to get here, and all of a sudden I'm not happy. But yet success, a lot of people really define success as having reached that sort of pinnacle of your career. And so it was really sitting down and thinking, okay, success for me now is going to be about, my relationships with my family and friends, the freedom to, have flexibility throughout my day. It's not going to be about the amount of money that is going into my bank account. It's not going to be about the title. And that's a mindset sort of shift and something that you have to get really comfortable with, that how I define success today is very different than how I defined success, 3 years ago, 5 years ago.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And Kristen, also, I would like to bring this perspective into this. Many of us, while we may not intentionally or internally aligned with the job we are doing, but then there are external factors to be considered. Maybe we have a family to provide,
Mhm.
we have caregiving responsibilities where we are financially like uh, entitled to um fulfill our responsibilities, and there uh, in such cases, where there is a big dilemma within us, where we are not in that position to make a choice,
Mhm.
uh, follow uh, what makes us happy. How do you suggest we can navigate through those kind of situations?
Absolutely, yeah, and I would say, one of the things that really helps, when I'm working with clients is really understanding what those commitments are, and what do you need to honor all of those commitments, and not completely, right, uplift like, just mess your whole life up, and so we talk about that a lot as having a ramp. For me, I have stepkids, I have, husband, we have financial commitments. So what we did is we really spent some time looking at what are all of those commitments, caring for his mom who's ill, and what do we need to make sure that we have without question that we're going to have available to us. And so I call it the ramp. It took me probably from the time I started to think about leaving to the time I actually left. It was a couple of years, and I
Mhm.
created what I called my freedom fund, and that was, we would kind of cut back on certain expenses to build up that freedom fund, which would give me and allow me to have, I knew when I left, I had 12 to 18 months, to make sure that my business was up and successful. that I could give myself that time. So it was making decisions like one less vacation a year, or we're going to cut out this cable or this streaming service, and that money would go into that freedom fund. So it's, and then the other thing is really planning, right? While you still have that paycheck coming in, you don't have to wait to start once you leave. You can start while you still are working in the role. And so I did a lot to, like I said before, understand my core values, to really get clear on what is it I wanted to do when I left. And then what are the things that I need to have in place when I leave. So for me, having worked in an organization for 30 years, my network was really kind of insular to that organization and that industry. So I focused a lot of work on building my LinkedIn presence, that was about me, Kristen, the person, versus Kristen that was an executive at a company. So I spent a lot of time kind of rebranding my LinkedIn profile, showing up as myself as a thought leader, and then also building my network with, others that were in the kind of industry or in coaching that had done this journey before, and spending time networking with them. How did you start your coaching business? What did that look like? What were your biggest learnings? What should I have ready to go on day one? And I spent, a year or two really building my network full of coaches or successful women entrepreneurs or business entrepreneurs, just to learn, so that when I did finally kind of say, okay, I can't do this anymore, that came a little bit earlier than I anticipated, but I was ready and I had the Freedom Fund kind of built up, just through changes that I'd made. I had, of course, cashed out some of my PTO when I left that went into that Freedom Fund. And then, I had a network of people that I had built up outside of who I was as an executive for a large company.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really important part of the support system, or connecting with like-minded people. You know, I think with people who have done that, they have gone through a similar kind of transition or journey. It's very, very important to you to connect with them, seek some guidance or advice, or suggestions from them, because they connect with your journey, or maybe the fear or the anxiety that you are having, the dilemma you are having, uh, to take that risk. So that's a really good point you shared, Kristen.
Thank you. Yeah, and being a business owner and entrepreneur, it's not easy with this all the planning that you can do, right? I say it's often like one of the best roller coasters you'll ever ride. On Monday morning, you could feel on top of the world. By Monday at 10, you could feel like this is never gonna work, and then by noon again, you've got a new client. So it's not for the faint of heart, and having people around you and building your network with people who have been there, have done it, and you can call on the phone and say, "Oh my gosh, I just lost my best client, and I don't know why even." And they can help kind of pick you up and help you ride that roller coaster, has been just so important. And then the lessons I learned from them, right? Like, one of the biggest lessons I heard, or things that I heard in my networking, was, "Don't worry about your website." People spend so much time worrying about a website. You just need to start, get some clients, build your business, then get a website. So there were little things like that that I picked up along the way that, I never would have thought of. I would have thought I needed to spend time building this website. And I often tell people that, they'll start and they'll spend months building this perfect website, and then worry about clients. It's like reverse that. So I learned a lot of just valuable, helpful things that saved me a lot of work.
Okay, okay. So, Kristen, for our listeners, especially those who may be completely new to this, concept or approach itself, or this, transition, that yes, it is possible. It may be difficult, but yes, it is possible. Let's first try to understand, what kind of misconceptions there are, because so many times we have heard this: follow your passion, entrepreneurship will give you that control over everything, but it is easier said than done. So what's one, or maybe more than one, misconception people have about entrepreneurship, especially after a corporate life?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the one that I would say is when you're in corporate and you're looking out at entrepreneurs, you're thinking, oh my gosh, they have so much freedom and so much flexibility, and they're just living the life. I would say we do have flexibility. We definitely have freedom, but we also have where most of us start as solopreneurs. So there's just us doing every aspect of the business all the time. And so, you can't just like today decide to go on a week-long vacation and not check your email, which I think sometimes when you're in corporate America, you kind of visualize it that way. It's a lot of work. It's hard. And when you are beginning and you're a solopreneur, there's no one there to cover for you when you're on vacation or you wanna take an afternoon off. And so, I often tell people there is flexibility and, you're in control of the policies and the procedures within your company, or if I work, 8 hours a day or I break it up throughout the day. But there's a lot of times where the workload and the lift, especially in the beginning, can feel a lot heavier. And that's where I think making sure that whatever you're doing and whatever business you're building, it is in your kind of passion, place, because that's what makes it easier, and makes it worth it when you're kind of working in alignment with your values and with something that you love. It doesn't make sometimes those long hours and that interrupted vacation, feel so bad.
Mhm, I agree. In building down to earth insights, Christian, you help others redefine success. So, how exactly do you define success now compared to how you would have defined it earlier in your career?
Oh, it's changed so much, and I would say, everyone I work with, when we work, get to the point of defining success for them, it's so different for each of us. For me
Mhm.
personally, I used to define success as the title that I had, the amount of money that was coming into my bank account, the physical things that I owned, right? Your house, your cars, all that, all those things, the ability to take these amazing vacations, all the sort of physical, external things that people can see about you. And now how I define success is, did I make, all my nephew's baseball games? Am I present throughout the day with my husband? Do I have the freedom to, if I want to, go take a walk in the middle of the day, I can do that. Have I helped, X number of people throughout the month achieve their goals, whether it's a promotion or leaving corporate America or moving jobs within corporate? And then, I was crazy enough to start a second business. So have I been able to help in that business people place their events in hotels all over the world, which feeds my passion of travel. So, it's very much now about more of the internal things, right? How have I served others? Have I shown up for my friends and family? Have I made it to the events or activities of people that are important to me? Those types of things.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this shift in definition, it feels so personal for me as well. And I mean, yeah, and it is really, really for me as well, Kristen. Uh, Earlier, my entire world, my entire identity was restricted to the work I was doing. I thought, okay, if somebody asks me who am I, or if I want to introduce myself to someone, I'll just say, okay, I'm so and so, working at so and so company. I do this. These are my achievements. Yes, I'm feeling very valued. But
Yeah.
right now, that definition has completely changed for me. I still introduce myself as a podcaster, but then I have myself kind of, rediscovered so many skills or like the hidden qualities within me, which may not be very relevant in the professional workspace. But if somebody asks me, then I may be able to give a better answer compared to the answer I could have given like 5 years back or 3 years back.
Absolutely. One of the things I often talk about is, once I left corporate America and I jumped on my first networking call and, you introduce yourself, I was at a complete loss. I'm like, okay, wait, I can't say, hi, I'm Kristen from XX company and I'm the vice president of public relations. Those introductions carry weight in rooms that you're in. I was like, all of a sudden, I'm like, I'm Kristen and I have no idea what to tell you. And so part of that, redefining success gets to that point exactly. And now I often say in my introductions, I'm a super aunt. Like I love being an aunt. It's one of my favorite roles. I have 13, soon to be 14 nieces and nephews. And so it's just it's interesting when you make that transition, how much you realize just how you met people, or how people introduced you. Hi, this is Kristen. She's an executive here. How that becomes just so ingrained that when it's gone, you're like, "What do I say?" And it takes time to work through that.
Mm, definitely. Okay. Okay. So, before we wrap up, Christian, for someone listening who is feeling torn between staying and leaving, I know it can be, it's kind of a difficult question, but still, what's the first small step they can take today?
I think the first small step is just giving yourself the space and the permission to really think about what needs to change, whether it's leaving or it's making adjustments to stay where you are. And spending time, whether it's hiring a coach, someone who can help you think through that and kind of push your thinking. I know my coach was very instrumental in helping me reframe and shift my mindset from thinking about all that I would lose when I left my corporate job, right? I would lose the paycheck, the benefits, the bonus, all relationships, to what was the cost of me staying there, which gets to the name of my book. The cost of me staying was my mental health, my, you know, just having time to exercise or to eat right or the stress levels that was showing up in blood results and those types of things. So really giving yourself the time and the space to sit down and think about what's the cost if I do make a change, but what's the cost if I don't make a change? And that's when you'll start to see, if it's impacting you to the point where you really need to make a change, you're going to start to see things on that list like my blood pressure. My health is deteriorating. I'm so stressed, that I'm not showing up with my family or I'm snapping at everybody I'm around. I feel angry all the time. And you start to think about the cost of staying and not taking action can be really, really powerful. But you really have to kind of give yourself some time and space to do that exercise and to make those 2 lists. And then, as you look at those lists, really think about if I don't make a change, what potentially could happen. You hear so often about the stories of people who don't make a change. And then when they retire, that, right after they leave, they have a massive heart attack or, the stress kills them. And so spending some time really thinking through what's the cost if I don't make a change or if I stay versus what's the cost if I leave, can be pretty powerful.
It can be. It is. It is.
Mhm.
At least I can vouch for that. And I don't want to like uh, single-handedly give a very direct opinion on this, but with my personal experiences, I can say that it's really, really empowering. It can be materialistically, um, maybe a bit not towards the attractive side, but holistically, soulfully, it is really empowering.
Yeah, and, I always tell people, when you make that leap and you do choose to start your own business and those types of things, it's important that you redefine what success means to you. Some entrepreneurs are incredibly lucky and they will make so much more than what they made in their corporate careers. Others will make the same amount and some will make less. But when you move into that, making sure that you have thought through it all and that regardless of where you end in that spectrum, that you've defined success in a way that is meaningful to you, and that it may not matter, right? If you're making millions of dollars a year, which is it would be nice, but it may not be one of your measures of success, so to speak.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Lovely. Lovely, Kristen. And if our listeners would like to connect with you and explore more about down to earth insights and also get a hold of your book, The Cost of Staying, what's the best way to do that?
Absolutely. So, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, just Kristen Chimack. I'm very active out there. Love to message, DM with people, or do kind of virtual free. I do a 30-minute free virtual coaching session. You can just book a call from my LinkedIn profile. You can check out my website at www.kristenchimack.com and learn all about my coaching businesses, my coaching packages. I have a few freebies out there you can download. And those are probably the 2 main places you can contact me. My book is available on Amazon, and it's just The Cost of Staying. You can search that and, my name, and it'll pop right up for you.
Beautiful. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes, Kristen. And thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with such honesty, vulnerability, and it has been such an empowering conversation. And thank you so much, Kristen. I personally felt so relieved, so empowered having this conversation with you today.
I'm so glad, and thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Lovely. And to all of our listeners, thank you so much for tuning to this episode of This Blend. And before closing this conversation, I would like to say that sometimes the biggest risk isn't leaving, it is staying, listeners. So until next time, keep blending business, boldness with balance.